He woke up with pain in his arms and legs. Heavy iron chains wrapped around his wrists and ankles. The room was dark, cold, and made of stone. Strange glowing plants grew from the walls, giving off soft green light. He didn't remember how he got there, only that he had been on a mission in deep space, and now he was in a cage like an animal. He tried to move, but the chains were too strong. He heard footsteps coming from a hallway outside, slow and heavy. Strange alien voices echoed through the darkness. They were speaking a language he didn't know, full of clicks and growls. Then, a door opened, and a tall creature with gray skin and 4 eyes looked at him. It said something, and threw food at his feet. The food looked like jelly and smelled bad, but he was too hungry to care. He ate in silence, his hands shaking. Days passed, maybe weeks. He was fed once a day. Never spoken to, never moved. Other prisoners cried in nearby cells. Some shouted, some went quiet. He started to lose hope. One night, while he was lying on the floor, he heard soft footsteps, different this time. They were light, careful, and didn't make the ground shake. He looked up, and there she was. A small figure stood outside his cell, glowing softly in the dim light. She wasn't like the others. She was tiny, maybe 4 feet tall, with long golden hair and big fox-like ears. Her eyes were bright amber, glowing with a strange fire. She wore simple golden cloth around her body, tied at her sides. She looked like a dream, soft and otherworldly. She stared at him for a moment, then knelt beside the cell door. He thought she was just another alien come to laugh at him or hurt him, but she did something else. She reached through the bars and touched the chains on his wrist. A warm light came from her fingertips, and the chains snapped open with a loud click. His eyes widened in shock. The girl looked into his eyes and spoke in a soft voice. He didn't understand her words, but they felt kind. She held out her hand, her small fingers glowing faintly. He didn't know if he could trust her, but he had no choice. He took her hand. She pulled him to his feet, and he almost fell from weakness. But she was strong for someone so small. She helped him walk, step by step. Through the hallway, the torches flickered as they passed, the silence broken only by their breathing. They reached a door, and she placed her hand on it. The stone melted into mist, revealing a path into the jungle outside. Cool air hit his face. The smell of trees and freedom made him gasp. She looked back at him and smiled. Then she said something again, more firm this time. He didn't understand, but he felt the meaning. She pointed to herself, then to him, and said in her soft alien voice, "You belong to me now." He didn't know what that meant, or why she had helped him. But in that moment, under the alien sky, he believed her. She wasn't just a girl. She was his rescuer, his mystery, his only hope. They disappeared into the trees, the sound of chains left behind. And somewhere in the shadows, other eyes watched them leave. But she didn't stop. She kept walking, holding his hand tightly. He was still weak, still confused. But now he had a reason to survive. He had to know why she saved him, and what it truly meant to belong to her. The trees were tall and thick, with twisted roots and glowing vines. Strange sounds filled the air, soft growls, distant howls, and the chirping of alien birds. The man followed the tiny alien girl through the jungle, each step shaky but determined. She never looked back. But he could feel that she was aware of him every second. She moved like wind, quiet and fast, stepping over roots and ducking under leaves with ease. He tried to keep up, but every part of his body ached from the chains. Still, he pushed forward. His name was Cole, once a soldier, once proud, now a fugitive in a world he didn't understand. The girl had saved him, but she hadn't said much since. She would glance at him now and then, her golden eyes glowing in the dim light. There was no fear in her, no hesitation, only focus. The jungle was alive, more alive than anything he'd ever seen. Plants moved when touched. Some even whispered softly as they passed. Insects the size of his fist buzzed by, glowing blue and green. Small creatures peeked from behind bushes, watching them with curiosity, but none attacked. It was as if her presence protected them. After hours of walking, the girl stopped near a shallow stream. She knelt, cupped water in her hands, and offered it to Cole. He drank, the cool water soothing his dry throat. She smiled, a tiny soft smile, then drank herself. She picked some fruit from a low tree, peeled it with her claws, and gave it to him. It tasted sweet, like honey mixed with mint. He nodded in thanks, and she tilted her head slightly. Watching him, he wondered if she could read his thoughts. They sat in silence by the stream. Cole looked at her more closely. Her skin was smooth, light bronze under the sun. Her long hair shimmered with gold. When it caught the light, she looked young. Yet there was something ancient in her eyes. She had power, not brute strength, but something deeper. He could feel it in her presence, in the way the jungle bent to her will. As the sun began to set, she stood up and motioned for him to follow. The light changed to orange and gold, casting long shadows. Soon, they came to a clearing. In the middle stood a tall tree, wide as a building, its trunk glowing faintly. She walked to its base and touched the bark. A door opened, not with sound, but like water sliding aside. Inside, it was warm and dimly lit, the walls pulsing like the heart of something alive. She led him to a small room with soft moss on the floor. There were carvings on the walls, symbols and pictures of people like her. One showed a tall figure with chains, standing beside a small girl with glowing eyes. He stared at it, a chill running through him. Was this a prophecy, a memory, or a warning? She saw him looking and walked over. She pointed to the small girl in the carving, then to herself. Then she pointed to the chained figure, and gently touched Cole's chest. He didn't understand all of it, but it was clear this wasn't a rescue by chance. It was something planned, maybe long ago, that night. She built a fire in the center of the room, using stones and her glowing touch. The flames rose without smoke. Warm and silent, they ate in silence, and slowly, she began to speak. Her words were broken, but he understood some. Enemy take many, she said. You. Different. He nodded slowly. Why me? She looked at the fire, then back at him. Heart strong, she said, touching her own chest, eyes kind. Then she looked away, like she was hiding something. He didn't press further. He lay back on the moss, watching the light dance on the walls. She sat nearby, legs crossed, tail wrapped around her knees. Watching the fire, he felt safe, for the first time since his capture. More than that, he felt like he belonged here. With her, outside, the jungle sang its night song. Creatures called, leaves rustled, and the stars moved slowly above, in this strange new world, far from Earth. Cole was no longer just a prisoner. He was something else, something chosen. And though he didn't fully understand what she meant when she said, "You belong to me," he was starting to believe her. Not because of chains or rules, but because of how she looked at him, like he mattered, like he was hers. Morning came slowly, with pale blue light shining through the cracks in the tree's walls. Cole woke up to the sound of gentle breathing. The alien girl sat beside the fire, her eyes closed, but her body alert. She hadn't slept much, but she didn't look tired. Her tail moved slowly behind her, swaying like a quiet wind. He sat up, and her eyes opened, glowing softly, without a word. She stood and offered him more fruit. He ate quietly, watching her movements, careful, graceful, like she was born to live in the wild. After eating, she motioned for him to follow again. This time, she seemed more serious, more focused. They left the giant tree and walked deeper into the jungle. The path became steeper, the trees thinner, and the air cooler. Bird-like creatures flew above them in flocks, their wings glowing with color. The sound of water echoed ahead, falling from a height. Soon, they reached the edge of a cliff, and Cole's eyes widened. Below them, hidden between tall rock walls, and thick vines, was a village. Dozens of small houses built into the side of the cliff, glowing with soft green light. Bridges of wood and vine connected the homes, like spiderwebs. Aliens, her kind, moved along the paths, climbing with ease. It was a living place, beautiful and strange. The girl turned to him and said, "Home." Then she stepped forward, walking down a hidden stair carved into the stone. Cole followed, careful not to fall. He felt exposed, like every eye was watching him, and they were. As they entered the village, the talking stopped. Aliens froze mid-step, staring at the human among them. Some looked scared, others angry, a few confused. Children hid behind their mothers. Old ones narrowed their eyes. Cole could feel the pressure, like a weight on his chest. The girl didn't stop, didn't flinch. She walked proudly, leading him through the heart of the village. When they reached a central platform, several older aliens stood waiting. They wore robes, necklaces made of bone and crystal, and held staffs that hummed softly. One of them stepped forward. Speaking sharply in their language, the girl replied, her voice strong, firm, full of fire. They argued he could tell by their tone. The elder pointed at Cole, then at the cliffs, then raised his staff. The girl took a step forward and shouted a single word, loud and clear. The entire village went silent. She looked back at Cole and walked to his side. She gently grabbed his wrist and held it up for all to see. Then she pointed to her own wrist, where a strange marking glowed beneath her skin. Two symbols, one on each of them, flashed in the same rhythm. Gasps filled the air. Whispers followed. He looked down at the mark on his arm. Glowing faintly blue. He didn't remember getting it, but it had appeared after the night in the tree. The girl whispered, "Bonded." He didn't understand, not fully, but the word felt heavy with meaning. Not just a link, not just friendship, something deeper, something sacred. One elder stepped forward, this time speaking slowly, carefully. "Human, not enemy?" he asked. Cole nodded. "Not enemy." The elder looked at the girl, then back at the others. He raised his staff, touched it to the ground, and the earth pulsed once. The others stepped back, their faces still unsure, but they didn't argue. The girl took Cole's hand and led him to a small home built into the rock. Inside, it was simple woven mats, carved bowls, glowing stones for light. She sat him down and placed a hand on his chest. "You stay safe," she said, slowly. He looked into her eyes. "What happens now?" She paused, then pointed to herself, then to him. "Now." Together, he felt something shift in the air, something unspoken, but strong. She had risked her life bringing him here. She had fought for him, argued for him, bonded with him, and now, she had claimed him, in front of all her people. He didn't know where this path would lead, but one thing was clear. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He was part of something bigger, something sacred, and the tiny alien girl who broke his chains had now broken the rules of her world to keep him. As the sun set behind the cliff, casting orange light through the village, Cole sat beside her, her hand still resting over his heart, and for the first time in this alien world, he felt like he had found his place, not just as a survivor, but as someone who was truly hers. Cole woke to the sound of soft singing. It was early morning, and the village was quiet. He sat up slowly, blinking at the pale green light coming from the cave walls. The alien girl sat by the entrance, facing the rising sun. Her voice was soft, haunting, filled with emotion he couldn't understand but could feel. She looked back at him and smiled gently, then stood in motion for him to follow. He did, without question. They walked through narrow stone paths, past silent homes and sleeping creatures. The jungle sounds were distant now, replaced by a deeper silence, the kind that only comes before something important. She led him to a hidden chamber at the top of the cliff. Vines covered the entrance, but when she touched them, they moved aside. Inside was a great stone hall, lit by glowing crystals on the ceiling strange symbols were carved into the floor and walls. The air smelled of dust, stone, and something ancient. At the center of the chamber stood a large stone table. Above it, a floating orb of soft blue light spun slowly. The girl walked forward and placed both hands on the stone. The orb responded, pulsing with light. She looked at Cole and said one word, clear and calm, bond. He stepped forward, unsure. As soon as his hands touched the stone, the orb flashed. Bright. A sudden rush of warmth filled his body. His mind was flooded with images, not his memories, but hers. He saw her as a child, training in the forest, crying alone, watching stars fall. He saw her scared, brave, angry, and hopeful, and then he saw himself, chained, broken, weak, and her running toward him, not with fear, but with purpose. The bond was real. It wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. She hadn't just chosen him because he was different. She had felt something. Inside him, something her people had spoken of in stories. Something called the return. He gasped and fell to his knees, overwhelmed. The girl rushed to him, holding his shoulders. Too much, she asked. He shook his head. No. I saw you. She nodded slowly. You see me. I see you. She reached into her satchel and pulled out two thin crystal bands. One she placed around her wrist, the other she offered to him. He took it, still catching his breath. As soon as the band touched his skin, it tightened gently and glowed with the same light as hers. The carvings on the wall behind them lit up, revealing a mural. It showed a human and an alien girl standing, side by side, hands joined, above them. A tree with golden leaves reached toward the stars. She walked to the mural and pointed to the human, then to Cole. Then she pointed to herself, and her eyes shined with meaning. This, not first time, she whispered. Cole stepped closer. You mean, it's happened before? She nodded. Long ago. One like you, one like me. Saved worlds. He looked at the mural again, heart beating fast. This wasn't just about her choosing him. It was destiny or something like it. He was part of a cycle. Something greater than he had ever known. Suddenly, the orb above them flickered and turned red. A low hum filled the air. The walls began to vibrate. The girl's face changed, her ears twitching. She turned to Cole, eyes wide. Danger, she said. They know. He didn't ask who. He didn't need to. Whoever had captured him, whoever had kept her people silent and afraid, they had felt the bond form. And now, they were coming? The girl ran to a nearby wall and pressed a stone. It opened a hidden door, revealing old weapons blades, bows, spears with energy cores. She handed Cole a small blade. Curved and glowing, it felt warm in his hand, as if it had been waiting for him. We go now, she said. No safe here. Cole nodded. Where? She pointed to the stars above the mural. To the place of fire, she said. Where it all began. They ran through the jungle paths, no longer hiding. The trees moved aside, as if guiding them. Animals watched them pass, silent and respectful. The bond had changed everything, not just between them, but in the world around them. Behind them, in the cliffs, smoke began to rise. Dark ships circled in the sky like birds of death. But Cole wasn't afraid anymore. He wasn't just a prisoner, or a stranger. He was hers. And now, he would fight to protect her. As the stars faded in the light of morning, the human and the tiny alien girl vanished into the jungle's heart. Chased by shadows, guided by destiny, bound by something older than war, older than time, and in the silence between footsteps, the world held its breath. The jungle was no longer silent. The sky rumbled above as dark ships hovered low, their engines growling like beasts. Cole and the alien girl ran through the undergrowth, moving fast. Every branch, every root, seemed to shift out of their way. But even the forest couldn't hide them forever. She held his hand tightly, guiding him through paths only she seemed to know. He could feel her heart beat through their bond fast, fierce, full of fire. His own heart beat with hers, not from fear, but from a growing sense of purpose. They were not just running, they were heading somewhere. Behind them, shapes moved through the tree stall, figures in black armor, the hunters. She called them ancient enemies of her people. They had been waiting, watching, and now the bond had awoken them. A pulse shot through the trees. Like a radar wave, Cole winced and stumbled, feeling pressure in his skull. She turned and placed her hand on his forehead. The pain faded instantly. "Our link. They track it," she said, her voice tense. "But we close." They reached a steep cliff where waterfalls roared into deep pools below. Without stopping, she leaped across a series of moss-covered stones. Cole hesitated only for a second, then followed her. Water splashed under his boots, but he made it across, above them. Red lights blinked in the clouds. More ships. The girl led him to a stone door, hidden behind a thick curtain of vines. She pressed her fingers into the stone, and the door opened with a deep hum. They slipped inside, just as a blast struck the cliff where they had stood. Dust and stone rained behind them, but the door sealed shut again. Inside, they were in a long tunnel carved from dark rock. The air was cold, and filled with the scent of metal and memory. Torches lit one by one as they walked deeper. Carvings on the wall showed battles, sacrifices, and the image of a human standing beside an alien girl. Always the same, always holding hands. "Who are the hunters?" Cole asked, his voice echoing. "They fear the bond," she answered. "Fear what it means." "What does it mean?" he asked again. She paused, looking up at the ancient carvings. "When one from the stars and one from the flame join, the cycle returns." Before Cole could ask more, a deep sound filled the tunnel like a heartbeat. They had reached the chamber. It was massive, round, and glowing with fire and crystal. In the center stood a tall device, half alive, half machine. The girl stepped forward and placed her hand on it. Energy surged around them, lighting up the carvings in gold. A map appeared in the air. Stars, planets, moving lines of light. One star blinked red, another blinked blue. She pointed to the red one, their base. Then she pointed to the blue one. "Our last hope. We must destroy the anchor," she said. "Break their power." Cole nodded. "Then we do it together." The device responded to their voices, pulsing brighter. The stone bands on their wrists grew warm. Their bond was awakening something, an ancient weapon, a memory of war. Suddenly, the chamber shook. A blast hit the outer wall, and part of the tunnel collapsed. The hunters had found them. Doors behind them burst open, and tall figures in armor stepped inside. Their eyes glowed red, weapons aimed forward. The girl didn't run. She stepped in front of Cole, her small body glowing with firelight. "Stay back," she said, her voice deep and strange. The hunters laughed. Their leader stepping forward. "She is the last flame bearer," he growled. "And you, human, are a mistake." Cole raised his blade, firelight dancing on the edge. "I've been called worse," he said. Then, without warning, the girl raised her hand. A wave of energy burst from her chest, knocking the hunters backward. The bond had changed her, given her more than memory. It had given her power. They fought side by side. Cole struck with his blade, fast and sharp. She moved like light, dancing through the enemy ranks, her hands burning with fire. The chamber shook again, dust falling from above, but they didn't stop. One by one, the hunters fell, but the leader still stood, taller than the rest. He grabbed Cole by the throat and lifted him into the air. "Your bond means nothing," he snarled, before Cole could answer. A flash of golden light pierced the hunter's chest. The girl stood behind him, her eyes glowing bright. "You're wrong," she said. "He belongs to me." The hunter fell, his armor cracking like dry earth. Cole dropped to the ground, gasping for breath. She rushed to him, her hands shaking. "I'm okay," he whispered. She touched his face, eyes full of fear and relief. Then, from the center of the chamber, the ancient device began to rise. It had been waiting for them, for their bond, for their strength, and now, The true journey would begin, not just to escape, not just to survive, but to finish what the first bonded pair had started. Together, they would rewrite the stars. The ancient machine stood still now, its glowing crystals pulsing like a heartbeat. Cole and the alien girl stood before it. Bruised and breathless, the hunters were gone, their bodies scattered across the stone floor, but there was no time to rest. The ground trembled under their feet, as if something deeper was awakening. The girl reached out and touched the machine. Again, a ring of light circled her fingers, then spread across her whole body. Cole stepped closer, watching as her expression changed, her eyes filled with light, not just gold now, but shades of blue, red, and white. It was like she was connected to something far beyond this place. Then the machine spoke not in words, but in thought. It filled Cole's mind with images, a burning star, a planet covered in darkness, two figures standing hand in hand. One was her, the other might have been him. Long ago, she said softly, a bond like ours stopped the war. But not forever. She turned to him, her face more serious than ever before. This machine is the flame core, she explained. It chooses the bonded to protect life, to balance light and dark. Cole took a deep breath, and now it's our turn. She nodded. If we finish the bond, we awaken the core, but it will take from us more than we know. He looked at her hand, then at the bracelet on his wrist. It was glowing brighter, pulsing with her heartbeat. They had already come so far. He had fought, bled, and nearly died, and through all of it, she had never let go of him. If this was the price to protect her, he would pay it. I'm ready, he said. She stepped forward and pressed her forehead to his. Then we do this together. As their bond deepened, the core lit up fully. The chamber filled with light, and the air began to vibrate. Symbols lifted off the walls and spun around them. The past, present, and future all collided in that moment. Cole saw a vision: millions of stars, worlds that had burned, and others saved by the power of the bond. He saw himself standing between light and shadow, and beside him, always, her. Suddenly, the core shifted, opening to reveal a small chamber inside. She motioned for him to step in, and he followed her without hesitation. Inside, they stood in a circle of light, their bracelets lifted from their wrists and floated above them, merging into one. A voice echoed in their minds, ancient and heavy. Two souls, now one, bearer of flame, keeper of life. Do you accept the burden of balance? The girl answered first, her voice strong. I do. Cole followed. I do. The moment the words were spoken, the chamber shook. Flames rose around them, not burning, but alive. The core wrapped them in light, and Cole felt it reach deep into his chest. It wasn't pain, but it wasn't easy. It was like something old inside him was breaking, and something new was being born. He looked at her, and she was glowing like a star, her small body trembling, but her eyes focused only on him. And then, it was over. The light dimmed, the flames faded, and the core closed. They stepped out, hand in hand, forever changed. But outside the chamber, things had changed too. The jungle was burning, black ships had landed, and the sky was filled with smoke. The village in the cliffs was under attack. They didn't speak. They ran, fast and fearless. The bond gave them strength, speed, and something else: understanding. They didn't need words now. They moved as one. When they reached the cliffs, the scene was chaos. Her people fought bravely, but the hunters were stronger. Cole jumped into the battle, blade flashing. She followed, hands glowing with fire, sending waves of energy into the enemy ranks. They were unstoppable. Where she moved, fire followed. Where he struck, enemies fell. Her people began to rally, seeing the bonded pair fight together. Then the enemy leader stepped forward. Taller and darker than the others, he carried a blade, made of shadow and flame. You are nothing but a mistake of history, he growled. Cole raised his blade. Maybe, he said, But this mistake has a purpose. They clashed in the middle of the burning cliffs, blade against blade, flame against shadow. The girl joined the fight, sending blasts of light into the dark sky. The leader howled in rage, swinging wildly, but they were too strong together. With a final strike, Cole drove his blade into the leader's chest. At the same moment, the girl sent a wave of fire through him. The leader screamed and fell, his body turning to ash. Silence followed. The battle was over. Her people bowed to them, not in fear, but in awe. The bond had awakened something sacred, something forgotten by time. Cole looked at her, blood on his hands, fire in her eyes. They had survived. They had won. But he knew the journey wasn't over. She touched his cheek, softly. Now, we go to the stars, she whispered, and he nodded, because whatever came next, whatever war, whatever darkness, they would face it together, bound by fire, bound by fate, bound forever. The sky was quiet again. Smoke from the battle rose gently into the morning air. The village on the cliff stood strong, though scars of the fight marked every wall. Bodies of the fallen hunters were burned in silence, and the people of the flame watched as their new protectors walked among them, hand in hand. Cole looked different now, not just in body, but in soul. His eyes glowed faintly, like hers, and the symbol on his wrist pulsed with a steady rhythm. The bond had changed him. He was no longer just human. He was something more, something connected to this world, and to her, the alien girl, once a silent outcast, now stood as their flame-bearer, their chosen protector, and beside her, Cole the outsider had become part of their legend. Their hearts were one now, their paths bound not by chains, but by choice. They stood at the edge of the cliffs as the sun rose. The jungle was calm again, the birds returned, the air full of life. But far above them, a new light blinked in the sky, a star that moved a ship, one of theirs, a calling, a message from beyond. She looked at Cole, her expression quiet, but sure. It's time, she said. He nodded slowly. To leave. To begin, she replied. The bond is not only for this place, it is for the stars. The elders gathered around them, their faces full of pride and sorrow. They knew this was a goodbye, but also a promise. One of the elders handed the girl a small divisor, crystal cube pulsing with gold. Take the flame to the stars, he said. Let them remember who we are. They left that afternoon, walking to a hidden place deep in the jungle. There, buried beneath the roots of a living mountain, was a ship, old, sleeping, covered in moss and vines. But when they approached, the bond lit the way. The ship awakened, its sides glowing, doors opening with a soft hum. Inside, it felt like a memory. Curved walls, smooth lights, symbols matching those from the chamber. The ship had been waiting, not for anyone, but for them. She touched the controls, and the ship responded like it knew her. Cole stepped beside her, placing his hand on the core. Together, their energy powered the heart of the ship. Engines hummed, systems activated, and the roof above them peeled away. The people below watched in silence as the ship rose. A slow, glowing ascent into the sky. Some cried, some smiled. All knew the truth. This was history repeating. The bonded were returning to the stars, to finish what others once began. As the ship left the planet's atmosphere, Cole looked out at the endless black. Stars blinked across the sky like fireflies. He had never felt so small, and yet, never so alive. She sat beside him, her hand in his, silent but warm. They didn't need words now. The bond spoke through feeling, through breath, through presence. The ship showed them a path, a line of stars that led to ancient ruins, forgotten stations, and lost beacons of flame, each one marked by the same symbol they both carried. The mission was clear: reignite the old bonds, awaken the sleeping flames, bring balance where it had been lost. But Cole had one question still in his heart. He turned to her, his voice soft. Why me? She smiled, brushing her fingers along his wrist, where the band still glowed. Because when I looked into your eyes, I saw myself, not who I was, she said, but who I could become. He stared at her for a moment, a tiny alien girl who once broke his chains, who claimed him in a whisper, who risked everything to free a stranger. And now, she was the center of his world. You saved me, he whispered. No, she replied gently. We saved each other. Their ship soared between stars, passing ancient satellites and forgotten warnings. Each new place they visited brought new trials, but also new hope. People whispered about the bonded pair, the flame bearer and the human who followed her. Legends began to form once again. And across the galaxy, where war had once burned and silence had spread, now the stars began to flicker back to life, because love had returned, not loud, not perfect, but real. In the dark, two lights shone side by side, one small and golden, the other strong and blue, and they moved as one, together,